Over the past 200 years, humanity has experienced unprecedented economic growth. World GDP has grown dozens of times, but it is hard to imagine that people have become 50 or 100 times happier. The relationship of economics to happiness and mental health is complex. There is even a scientific discipline called the economics of happiness. According to the World Happiness Report that reveals how people around the world subjectively rate their lives, in general, people in rich countries tend to give better estimates than in poor countries. But it's not that simple. For example, in Kyrgyzstan, where the GDP purchasing power parity per capita is $5,300 and the average life satisfaction score was 5.8. In Japan, where the GDP purchasing power parity per capita is $42,000, but the average score was 6.1. At the same time, in Hong Kong, where the GDP purchasing power parity per capita is $65,800, the average life satisfaction score is only 5.3. We can also find some other interesting insights from the World Happiness Report, such as there is a correlation between trust in the institutions and happiness as well as with the perception of corruption. This makes a lot of sense. People who trust the government can feel more confident and optimistic about the future, although it is also possible that people who are simply happier are more likely to trust the government. And corruption undermines trust in the government, creates inequality and discrimination, and negatively affects the economy. Corruption is one of the key factors that distinguishes rich and poor countries. Of course, these estimates are a very blurry thing, and if a person rates their satisfaction with life as 8 out of 10 and the other one as 4 out of 10, this doesn't necessarily mean that the first person is 2 times more satisfied than the second one. And yes, of course I know that the correlation doesn't mean causation. I heard this phrase 100 times already and I got tired of it. Moreover, I know that if there is a statistical gap but the dispersion is very high, no general conclusions can be made. Also, statistical gaps do not mean that something generally applies to people in some way. For example, if marriages between atheists have a higher divorce rate than marriages between Catholics, this doesn't necessarily mean that marriages between atheists are generally more fragile. Such a statistical difference for some specific situations doesn't mean that it will be applicable to people in general. As for mental health, there is no correlation between the wealth of the country and mental problems. Around the world, in all countries, the number of people diagnosed with a mental illness varies from 10 to 20%. And by the way, over the past 30 years, these percentages have not changed much. The same goes for certain mental illnesses. Worldwide, the percentage of people with depression also varies on average from 2 to 6%. However, the absence of correlation doesn't mean that the economy has no effect on mental problems. I would divide factors that affect happiness into 2 groups. The first group is the factors that have a strong connection with happiness, and the second group is the factors that can influence happiness, but they vary greatly from person to person and situation to situation. The first category includes genes. Some people just produce more hormones of happiness than other people, so different people need more or less effort to be happy. The next factor is health, both mental and physical. The next factor is past, childhood, youth, failures, success, experiences, environment, safety, nature and people around, freedom, personal qualities, kindness, forgiveness, optimism, gratitude, and values. Helping others, personal growth, sustainability, and purpose. The list of personal qualities and values is quite long. The second category includes such factors as money, marriage, age, and knowledge. There is also another important factor such as activity, work, hobbies, and entertainment. And I don't know which group to put the activity in, so let it be a separate factor. Money is a very complicated factor. People don't value money objectively. Making $100,000 will feel better than losing $100,000 after earning $200,000. The outcome is the same. You earned $100,000 in both cases, but it feels very different. The same thing with the marriages, by the way. It feels better to be never married than to be divorced or widowed. Another problem is that it's not only how much money you have that matters, but how much the people you know have. For example, if you receive the $1,000 bonus, you would like it, but if your colleagues received a $5,000 bonus at the same time, you probably would not like it. Studies show that the absence of negative events or experiences has a more powerful impact on happiness than the presence of positive ones. People quickly get used to positive things. If your wage increases by 2 or 3 times, you will feel a short-term euphoria, but then you will return to your common state. If you would live a couple of weeks without electricity, water, heating, the internet and communications, and then return to your usual environment, a short-term increase in satisfaction guaranteed. The race for happiness and endless blessings is doomed to failure in advance. Our expectations grow with each satisfied need, so there is no end to this run. It's not possible to stop on this pleasure treadmill. You will simply be blown away from it into melancholy, angsty and depression. But abandoning the treadmill is also impossible. No matter how hard you try, you will remain in one place, at the level of subjective happiness. Someone will be happy from earning money and spending it, but for someone else, it can only bring some small short-term pleasure, and although there is a certain correlation between happiness and money, the spread from person to person is very large. This is exactly the case when, due to large dispersion, it is impossible to draw any general conclusions. Long story short, we simply cannot say that money makes us happier or vice versa. We just do not have reliable data for this. In some cases, money can give you access to better medicine and mental health professionals, the ability to be more secure and have your own bodyguards, or move to a safer area. But in other cases, money can give stress and worries about the legality and responsibility for business activities. Moreover, we also need to take into account the fact that people who receive more money work in other jobs than those who receive less, so work can play a bigger role than income. Most people tend to have unrealistic ideas about wealth. The thing is that wealth is chaotic. You can make a lot of money once, then lose it for several years, then make a lot of money again. Some projects may fall apart, some projects may give some small results that grow into big ones, and then there may be a lot of failures. Another interesting point is the findings of the Grant study. This is a 75-year study of adult development research of Harvard Medical School, which studied the lives of 268 students in the 1940s. It turned out that financial success depends on the warmth of relationships and, above certain level, not on intelligence. Those who scored the highest on measures of warm relationships earned an average of $131,000 more per year at their peak salaries, usually between ages 55 and 60. There is no significant difference in the maximum income earned by men with IQs in the 110-115 range and men with IQs above 150. Men who had warm relationship with their mothers as children earned an average of $87,000 more per year than men whose mothers didn't care for them. Thus, we can assume that it is this warmth of relationships that can make people with higher incomes happier. Research has shown that people who have a strong social support network, including friends, tend to have better mental health as well as lower levels of anxiety and depression. In addition, having close friends to rely on can give people a sense of purpose and meaning in life. Speaking about the warmth of relationships, money allows people to move to other locations and accordingly lose their connections in the cities and villages where they lived. Although loneliness is not a critical factor, it is easier to be happy and mentally healthy when you are in a good company. Good company is better than loneliness, but loneliness is better than bad company. Same thing with marriage. A happy marriage is better than being single, but being single is better than an unhappy marriage. Money also allows people to have more options. And then there is the choice paradox, which is a phenomenon where having too many options can make it hard to make a decision. It is much easier to choose between 2 options than between 30 options. The paradox of choice arises because when we have many options, we begin to compare them and weigh the pros and cons of each. This can lead to analysis paralysis, where we are so wrapped up in evaluating each options that we can't actually make a decision. Another contributing factor to the paradox of choice is the fear of missing out. When we see all these options, we worry that we might make the wrong choice and miss out on something better. However, many researchers still agree that for happiness it is important to have a certain level of income that allows you to live more or less normally. This makes a lot of sense to me. If, for example, my income grows 5 times, I will continue to eat the same food, wear the same clothes, watch the same movies, spend the same amount of time on the internet, the same amount of time working, playing the same games, and sleeping 8 hours a day. That is, my standards of living will not really change. But if I lose my income and my savings, my life will significantly change for the worse. Another topic is losses. It is clear that economic instability can have a significant impact on our well-being and quality of life, and accordingly on our mental health and happiness. When the economy is in a downturn, people can lose their jobs, struggle to get basic needs, be forced to make difficult choices, such as whether to pay for basic needs like food or housing, or prioritize other expenses like healthcare or education. These decisions can further cause more anxiety and stress. Economic crisis can also have broader social impacts, including increased crime, homelessness, and substance abuse. These issues can also contribute to mental health issues and the general feeling of despair. Another interesting topic is how advertising affects our mental health. As we all know, advertising is very different. Advertising can have both negative and positive impacts on our mental health. Advertising may promote products and services that make us feel better, such as healthy food, fitness equipment, and mental health care. But of course, not all advertising is good. Advertising is primarily designed to arouse desire and stimulate consumption, often appealing to our insecurities and creating a sense of inadequacy. For example, ads may suggest that we need to buy certain products in order to look better, be happier, or feel more confident. This can lead to feelings of insecurity and low self-esteem. Advertising can create a culture of consumption where we are encouraged to constantly buy new things and accumulate more possessions. Imagine if I sit in front of you, start eating pizza, and tell you how delicious it is and what a loser you are for not eating it. Advertising cultivates materialism, as it often promotes the idea that happiness and success are associated with the possession of certain goods or with a certain lifestyle. And materialism is exactly the factor that has a connection with unhappiness. The last thing that I want to mention is that extreme poverty and extreme wealth can be bad for mental health. If everything is clear with extreme poverty, everything is a little bit more complicated with extreme wealth. And again, I have to mention that cases are different and a lot of money can bring sense of security and stability, but there are other cases. One of the main problems associated with extreme wealth is the need to preserve it. Wealthy people may feel pressure to continue accumulating more wealth, maintain their status and lifestyle, and ensure that their children inherit their wealth. Another problem associated with extreme wealth is social isolation. Wealthy people may find it difficult to connect with other people who are not as rich as them, or they may worry that others are only interested in them because of their wealth. In addition, extreme wealth can also lead to a sense of privilege, which can make it difficult for rich people to connect with others and interact with the world in a meaningful way. That's all for today. Thank you for listening.